In a moment, Andres saw Paulina, enveloped in a catatonic state after their daughter's death, and wondered if she would ever return to her former self. Was there even a remedy for such profound grief? Andres and his wife, Paulina, had once enjoyed what many would deem an ideal life: successful careers, a happy marriage, and a cherished daughter named Elena. Their home seemed to overflow with happiness, with each day offering a chance to celebrate the love and family they had built. However, everything changed on a tragic summer day when a car accident shattered this perfect image. That fateful day, Paulina and Elena were returning from a park visit. The sun was shining, and the day promised to be wonderful until, in the blink of an eye, their lives were turned upside down. The accident was swift and brutal. While Paulina emerged without severe injuries, the emotional toll was devastating. Elena, their beloved daughter, was not so fortunate. The tragedy shattered Paulina, who could not forgive herself for failing to secure Elena properly in her car seat. "If I had been more attentive, Andres, if I had secured Elena properly," Paulina repeated over and over, tears streaming down her face. "I lost her because of my mistake." Andres held her hand, trying to offer strength. "It wasn't your fault, Paulina. It was a tragic accident, but you can't blame yourself forever. We'll get through this together." Guilt began to consume Paulina the moment she received the news. She replayed the accident in her mind over and over, each detail turning into a relentless hammer of guilt and despair. She endlessly questioned whether she could have done something differently, whether the tragedy could have been avoided. These questions had no answers, tormenting her day and night. In the initial days following the accident, Paulina tried to carry on, but the loss of Elena was an unbearable weight. She cried constantly and struggled to eat or sleep. Andres did everything he could to comfort her, but nothing seemed capable of easing the overwhelming pain she felt. The home, once filled with laughter and joy, fell into an oppressive silence. Over time, Paulina's condition worsened. She began to distance herself from friends and family, unable to cope with her own emotions, let alone with others' concern. The daily responsibilities that she once managed easily became insurmountable burdens. Andres watched with increasing desperation as the woman he loved transformed before his eyes. The guilt and pain evolved into deep depression. Paulina started to isolate herself more and more, refusing to leave the house or see anyone. Andres took her to therapists and doctors in hopes of finding some form of help, but recovery seemed distant. Each attempt at therapy seemed to open even more wounds rather than heal them. "Paulina, please come with me to the doctor today," Andres pleaded. "He can help us, help you get through this pain." Paulina would only shake her head, her eyes vacant. "It's pointless, Andres. Nothing will bring Elena back." Eventually, Paulina fell into a catatonic state, completely disconnected from reality. Her vacant and distant gaze suggested that her mind had retreated to a place where pain could not reach her. She spent most of her time sitting in silence, staring into nothingness, unable to communicate or respond to Andres' attempts to engage her with the present. Paulina's transformation was devastating for Andres, who was already grappling with his own grief over Elena's loss and now had to be the primary caretaker for Paulina. The responsibility of maintaining the home and caring for his wife became overwhelming. He hired Francisca, a devoted caregiver, to help with daily tasks and provide some level of normalcy to their home. Francisca became a constant and comforting presence, but even with her help, Paulina's absence, as she used to be, left an unbearable void. Andres often sat beside Paulina, holding her hand, waiting for a sign of return. He spoke to her about the past, about Elena and their eternal love, but rarely received a response. "Paulina, I know it's hard," he said with a broken voice, "but we need you. I need you. We can get through this together." Days became a struggle for Andres, each marked by silence and absence. He continued to work to maintain the house and pay for Paulina's treatments, but the emotional burden was immense. The pain of losing Elena and Paulina's transformation were deep scars he carried as he desperately tried to find a way to heal his family. On a particularly tough day, Andres took the car and drove aimlessly around the neighborhood to clear his mind. Lost in thoughts about how life might have been different, He was abruptly jolted from his melancholy when he spotted a scene that caught his attention. From a distance, he saw a small, fragile girl with dirty, torn clothes picking up scraps of food from the ground. Nearby, a man watched her with an unsettling, eerie gaze. Andres' protective instinct kicked in. He knew he couldn't ignore it. He got out of the car, approached the girl quickly, ignoring the man, and knelt beside her. "Hello, little one," he said gently. "Are you okay? Are you hungry?" The girl looked up, revealing profound sadness. "Yes, I'm hungry," she replied almost in a whisper. "What's your name?" Andres asked, trying to be as kind as possible. "My name is Fernanda," she replied shyly, looking at the ground. Andres felt a pang in his heart. "Where are your parents, Fernanda?" he asked with concern. "I don't have parents," she said with tears in her eyes. "I live alone in a makeshift shelter." Fernanda's response touched Andres deeply, as he saw in her eyes a reflection of the pain he himself felt. "How would you like to come to my house today? We can give you a bath, a good meal, and a safe place to sleep," he offered, hoping she would agree. Fernanda, in her innocence and vulnerability as a 6-year-old, accepted. Andres took Fernanda's hand and led her to the car, filled with concern. He realized how easy it was for someone with bad intentions to approach such a vulnerable child and gain her trust. "If anyone is going to take care of this girl, it will be me, and I will do no harm." Andres drove back home with Fernanda in the back seat, in the spot where Elena's car seat had once been. With his heart divided between worry and hope, he knew that the presence of the girl might bring a new dynamic to the home, but he also feared Paulina's reaction. The tragedy had plunged the house into a constant state of sadness, and any change was a risky bet. When they arrived home, Andres helped Fernanda out of the car. Though scared and shy, the girl showed a glimmer of curiosity. They entered together, and the housekeeper, Francisca, who was in the kitchen, looked up in surprise at the new visitor. Andres asked her to wait a moment while he introduced Fernanda to Paulina. They went to the room where Paulina spent most of her time, wrapped in her own pain and confusion. Andres approached her with Fernanda by his side, keeping his voice soft and calm. "Paulina, this is Fernanda. I found her today and she needs our help. She was alone in a risky situation, so I brought her here to care for her, and we'll see what the best way is to ensure her well-being." Paulina, with a vacant gaze, showed no reaction. There were moments when she seemed to understand what was happening around her, but this was not one of them. Andres held her hand for a moment, hoping for a sign of recognition that didn't come. He knew he couldn't wait much longer. With a sigh, he returned to the living room where Francisca waited with Fernanda. The girl looked visibly uncomfortable but tried to maintain her composure. Andres knelt beside her and spoke gently. "Fernanda, this is Francisca. She'll help you feel at home here." Standing up, Andres pulled Francisca aside and explained his plan. "Francisca, I found Fernanda in a terrible situation. I want her to stay here for a while, at least until she recovers a bit. She needs care, a bath, clean clothes, and a decent meal. Can you take care of that?" Francisca, always practical and kind-hearted, nodded with determination. "Of course, Mr. Andres. I'll take care of her. This little girl will feel better soon." Andres felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Though temporarily, he knew he couldn't solve all the problems at once, but this small act of kindness was a start. Fernanda's presence might bring a bit of light to the home so deeply marked by sorrow. Francisca kept her promise. She took Fernanda to the bathroom, where the girl could finally enjoy a warm bath, feeling the dirt and exhaustion wash away. Francisca, with years of experience caring for many people, knew exactly how to make her feel safe and welcome. After the bath, she dressed Fernanda in clean, comfortable clothes. In the kitchen, she prepared a nutritious and delicious meal. The girl, who hadn't remembered the last time she had eaten something like this, devoured every bite with gratitude and joy. With a full stomach and a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time, Fernanda began to explore the house. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she walked through the spacious, history-filled hallways. Andres watched from a distance, with a mix of worry and hope in his heart. He knew the house was full of memories, some painful, but he also believed that this place could offer Fernanda the stability she desperately needed. Francisca accompanied her in the exploration, showing her every corner of the house. When they reached Elena's old room, Andres hesitated. He felt a deep fear that this could disturb Paulina, as the room was a shrine to the daughter they had lost. Lost in his thoughts, Andres decided to allow Fernanda to see Elena's room, believing that this would be the ideal place for her to stay and play. Elena's room was practically untouched, as if awaiting the return of its little owner. The walls were adorned with drawings and posters of fairy tale characters, and there was a small bed covered with a colorful duvet. Dolls and toys were organized on shelves, and in one corner there was a tea table ready for the next imaginary party. Fernanda entered the room carefully, as if she were stepping into a sacred place. Her eyes shone with a mix of excitement and respect. Francisca explained that this had been the room of Elena, Andres and Paulina's daughter, and told her that she could play there if she wanted, with a warm smile. Andres watched from afar, dealing with the guilt that always plagued him. He loved Paulina deeply and felt that he was failing her by not being able to give her all the attention she needed. However, the reality was that he had to work to keep the house, pay for Paulina's medical treatments, and Francisca's service. The constant struggle to balance his responsibilities left him exhausted, but he refused to give up. As Fernanda explored the room, she found a little box of memories on one of the shelves. Curiosity overcame hesitation, and she opened the box, discovering photos and small objects that told stories of love. Paulina and Elena appeared in several photos, laughing and playing together. One image in particular caught Fernanda's attention: Paulina and Elena dressed as princesses, with crowns and sparkly dresses, immersed in a fantasy world. Noticing Fernanda's interest, Francisca gently explained that Paulina and Elena loved to play dress-up. They had a collection of costumes and would spend hours telling stories and having fun. Paulina was always very creative, and she loved to see Elena smile. Francisca's words touched Andres deeply, who knew how much those games meant to Paulina and how painful her loss had been since the accident. The house was now marked by a silent sadness, but Fernanda's presence seemed to bring a new energy. He hoped that, somehow, that could help Paulina find some peace. Fernanda, feeling more and more at ease, began to look through the costumes in the closet. She put on a little Red Riding Hood costume and, with Francisca's help, looked at herself in the mirror with a radiant smile, the first since her arrival. The connection between Fernanda and the house grew every minute, and she began to feel part of that place, something she had not experienced in a long time. Andres, for his part, felt a mixture of relief and hope. He knew that the road to healing would be long, but he believed that they had taken an important first step. Meanwhile, the silence in Paulina's room was only interrupted by the soft sound of her breathing. Andres, after making sure that Fernanda was adjusting well, headed to his office to resolve some urgent matters at work. Francisca, aware that Fernanda needed a cozy and safe environment, left her in Elena's room, still dressed as a princess, playing among the toys and costumes. With a fervent imagination, Fernanda left the room and began to explore the halls of the house, feeling like a true princess. Her steps led her to a half-open door, that of Paulina's room. Curious and brave, Fernanda entered the room and found Paulina sitting in an armchair, immersed in her inner world. Her eyes were fixed on a distant point, oblivious to what was happening around her. Fernanda, with her innocent heart full of compassion, approached slowly. "Hello?" she said in a soft voice. Paulina did not respond, remaining motionless. Fernanda moved a little closer, took Paulina's hand delicately and gave her a soft kiss on the cheek. That simple yet loving gesture seemed to have an almost magical impact. Not wanting to disturb her any further, Fernanda stepped away and began humming a song she knew well, the Little Red Riding Hood song. She skipped happily and twirled around the room, letting the melody fill the space. Then something incredible happened. Paulina, for the first time in a long time, began to react. Her lips moved, babbling parts of the song Fernanda was singing. There was a spark of excitement in her eyes, a flash of recognition and connection. At that very moment, Andres was passing by the hallway and, seeing the door half open, He looked into the room. The sight he saw was astonishing. Fernanda, dressed as a princess, singing and dancing as Paulina began to babble the song along with her. Emotion flooded Andres, who leaned against the wall with his eyes filled with tears, unable to contain himself. The scene in front of him was more than he had expected. Seeing Paulina, even if only for a brief moment, interact with another person and awaken a dormant emotion was a dream come true. That moment was like a ray of light breaking through the dark clouds that had hung over his life since the accident. He had dreamed so many times of Paulina's return, of a sign that she was still there somewhere inside his mind. And now, thanks to Fernanda's presence, that moment had finally arrived. Fernanda, unaware of the impact she was making, continued to sing and dance, her innocence and joy radiating through the room. Paulina, her eyes shining, tried to follow the melody, her hands shaking slightly as she held on to the chair. Andres entered the room, approaching slowly so as not to interrupt the magic of the moment, and sat down next to Paulina, taking her hand. "Paulina," he whispered with a broken voice. "Are you listening? She's here to help us." Paulina slowly turned her head, meeting Andres' eyes in a brief but intense moment. Although she couldn't verbalize her feelings, Andres knew that something inside her was struggling to emerge. Fernanda, noticing Andres' presence, smiled at him. "We're singing," she said happily while still jumping around. "Paulina knows this song." "Yes, she does," Andres replied with a grateful smile. "I used to sing this song with our daughter." After Paulina's flash of lucidity, Andres began to believe that nothing in life happens by chance. He reflected on recent events with a growing sense of gratitude. It was no coincidence that he decided to go out to clear his mind on that particular day, and it was definitely no coincidence that he found Fernanda being mistreated by other children. Fernanda hadn't come into his life by accident. She was bringing a light that house hadn't seen in a long time. The dynamic in the house changed radically. The constant sadness that permeated every corner began to be replaced by laughter and joy. Fernanda, with her innocence and energy, brought a vitality that had disappeared since the tragedy, filling the house with songs, games, and an insatiable curiosity that infected everyone around her. Andres watched these changes with a mixture of admiration and relief. Every smile from Fernanda, every small progress from Paulina, was a reminder that hope still existed. He began to talk to Paulina more, even though she did not respond verbally. One day, while they were together in the living room, he decided to share an idea that had been brewing in his mind. "Paulina," he began, holding her hand, "I have been thinking a lot about Fernanda. She has brought so much joy to our home. I know it is not easy for you, but I think we should consider her part of our family. What do you think about officially adopting her?" Paulina said nothing, as expected, but something in her eyes changed. A single tear rolled down her face and Andres wiped it tenderly. For him, that tear was a clear sign that Paulina was, in some way, sharing that decision. Even in her condition, she could feel the importance and depth of that moment. With a lighter heart, Andres decided it was time to talk to Fernanda about the possibility of adoption. He found her in the garden playing with the flowers and sat down next to her. "Fernanda, I have something important to tell you," he began with a smile. Fernanda looked at him expectantly, her eyes shining with curiosity. "What is it, Mr. Andres? I would like to know if you would like to stay with us forever. We would like to adopt you and officially make you part of our family. What do you think?" Fernanda's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Really? Can I really stay here forever?" "Yes, you really can stay here forever," Andres confirmed, feeling a surge of emotion as he saw the pure happiness on her face. Fernanda threw herself into Andres' arms, hugging him with all the strength she could muster. "Thank you so much, Mr. Andres. I never thought I could be so happy." Andres hugged her back, feeling that this was one of the most rewarding moments of his life. When they parted, he saw Francisca standing at the garden gate, watching the scene with tears in her eyes. "I am so happy for you," Francisca said, wiping away her tears. "Fernanda has brought so much joy to this house. It is wonderful that she is staying forever." Andres smiled at Francisca, feeling deep gratitude for her constant presence and support. Yes, she has brought new life to all of us, and I know that, in time, Paulina will benefit from this joy as well. The decision to adopt Fernanda marked a turning point. Her presence continued to transform the house in subtle and profound ways. The scene in front of him was more than he had expected. Seeing Paulina, even if only for a brief moment, interact with another person and awaken a dormant emotion was a dream come true. That moment was like a ray of light breaking through the dark clouds that had hung over his life since the accident. He had dreamed so many times of Paulina's return, of a sign that she was still there somewhere inside his mind. And now, thanks to Fernanda's presence, that moment had finally arrived. Fernanda, unaware of the impact she was making, continued to sing and dance, her innocence and joy radiating through the room. Paulina, her eyes shining, tried to follow the melody, her hands shaking slightly as she held on to the chair. Andres entered the room, approaching slowly so as not to interrupt the magic of the moment, and sat down next to Paulina, taking her hand. "Paulina," he whispered with a broken voice. "Are you listening? She's here to help us." Paulina slowly turned her head, meeting Andres' eyes in a brief but intense moment. Although she couldn't verbalize her feelings, Andres knew that something inside her was struggling to emerge. Fernanda, noticing Andres' presence, smiled at him. "We're singing," she said happily while still jumping around. "Paulina knows this song." "Yes, she does," Andres replied with a grateful smile. "I used to sing this song with our daughter." After Paulina's flash of lucidity, Andres began to believe that nothing in life happens by chance. He reflected on recent events with a growing sense of gratitude. It was no coincidence that he decided to go out to clear his mind on that particular day, and it was definitely no coincidence that he found Fernanda being mistreated by other children. Fernanda hadn't come into his life by accident. She was bringing a light that house hadn't seen in a long time. The dynamic in the house changed radically. The constant sadness that permeated every corner began to be replaced by laughter and joy. Fernanda, with her innocence and energy, brought a vitality that had disappeared since the tragedy, filling the house with songs, games, and an insatiable curiosity that infected everyone around her. Andres watched these changes with a mixture of admiration and relief. Every smile from Fernanda, every small progress from Paulina, was a reminder that hope still existed. He began to talk to Paulina more, even though she did not respond verbally. One day, while they were together in the living room, he decided to share an idea that had been brewing in his mind. "Paulina," he began, holding her hand, "I have been thinking a lot about Fernanda. She has brought so much joy to our home. I know it is not easy for you, but I think we should consider her part of our family. What do you think about officially adopting her?" Paulina said nothing as expected, but something in her eyes changed. A single tear rolled down her face and Andres wiped it tenderly. For him, that tear was a clear sign that Paulina was, in some way, sharing that decision. Even in her condition, she could feel the importance and depth of that moment. With a lighter heart, Andres decided it was time to talk to Fernanda about the possibility of adoption. He found her in the garden playing with the flowers and sat down next to her. "Fernanda, I have something important to tell you," he began with a smile. Fernanda looked at him expectantly, her eyes shining with curiosity. "What is it, Mr. Andres? I would like to know if you would like to stay with us forever. We would like to adopt you and officially make you part of our family. What do you think?" Fernanda's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Really? Can I really stay here forever?" "Yes, you really can stay here forever," Andres confirmed, feeling a surge of emotion as he saw the pure happiness on her face. Fernanda threw herself into Andres' arms, hugging him with all the strength she could muster. "Thank you so much, Mr. Andres. I never thought I could be so happy." Andres hugged her back, feeling that this was one of the most rewarding moments of his life. When they parted, he saw Francisca standing at the garden gate, watching the scene with tears in her eyes. "I am so happy for you," Francisca said, wiping away her tears. "Fernanda has brought so much joy to this house. It is wonderful that she is staying forever." Andres smiled at Francisca, feeling deep gratitude for her constant presence and support. Yes, she has brought new life to all of us, and I know that, in time, Paulina will benefit from this joy as well. The decision to adopt Fernanda marked a turning point. Her presence continued to transform the house in subtle and profound ways. Every day, Paulina seemed to show slight signs of improvement, becoming more responsive to the stimuli around her. Fernanda, with her kindness and energy, seemed to have an innate ability to touch the deepest fibers of Paulina's soul, awakening parts of her that Andres feared had been lost forever. One quiet night, after a day full of activities and excitement, Andres's house fell into silence. They had all dined together, enjoying a meal carefully prepared by Francisca, and had retired to their rooms to rest. Andres, exhausted, fell into a deep sleep almost immediately. Francisca also slept in her room at the back of the house, while Paulina lay in her bed, immersed in her own silent world. The silence of the night was interrupted, however, by the moans of pain coming from Fernanda's room. The sounds were loud and persistent, but Andres, in his deep sleep, did not hear them, and Francisca did not wake up either. Paulina, however, heard the moans. Something inside her, perhaps a vestige of her maternal instinct, reacted to those sounds of anguish. She opened her eyes, adjusting to the darkness, and heard Fernanda's moans becoming increasingly intense. Driven by a sudden and powerful instinct, Paulina got out of bed, coming out of her catatonic state, and quickly went to the little girl's room to see what was happening. Entering Fernanda's room, Paulina found the little girl in bed, moaning and murmuring in pain, her face flushed and tears in her eyes. Paulina, who had previously been trapped in her own mind, seemed to suddenly come back to life. She ran to Fernanda's side, put her hand on her forehead, and found that she had a high fever. In a voice she had not used for a long time, Paulina desperately cried out, "Andres!" The sound of her voice, loud and clear, full of urgency, woke Andres with a start. Frightened, he thought for a moment that he was dreaming, but soon realized that Paulina was not at his side. Confused and worried, he ran out of the room, following the sound of Paulina's voice, and found her in Fernanda's room, holding the feverish child in her arms. The scene seemed like a miracle. Paulina had come back to life, moved by love and concern for Fernanda. As soon as she saw Andres, Paulina spoke with a clarity he had not heard in years. "We have to take her to the hospital, Andres. She is not doing well at all." Andres was stunned, not only by Fernanda's condition, but by the fact that Paulina was there, completely present and acting. He stood for a moment, unable to process everything, but the urgency of the situation quickly brought him back to reality. "Yeah, sure," he said, regaining his composure. "We're going to take Fernanda to the hospital right away." He took Fernanda into his arms, feeling the feverish warmth of her body against his. Paulina followed close behind, her expression one of maternal concern and renewed determination. Andres couldn't believe what was happening. It was as if Paulina had emerged from a long nightmare. In the car on the way to the hospital, Paulina held Fernanda's hand, whispering words of comfort. Andres drove fast but carefully, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't know what to expect, but he felt a mix of fear and hope. Paulina's active presence at his side was a sign that maybe things were finally starting to get better. Upon arriving at the hospital, Andres and Paulina took Fernanda to the emergency room. The doctors, quickly aware of the seriousness of the situation, began treating the little girl's high fever and intense pain. Andres stood by Paulina's side, holding her hand as he watched the doctors work, feeling a wave of conflicting emotions, concern for Fernanda and an indescribable relief to see Paulina so engaged and active after so long. After a while, one of the doctors came over and reported that Fernanda was stable and that her fever was beginning to go down. "She needs rest and monitoring, but she's out of immediate danger," the doctor said in a comforting tone. Andres breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Paulina, who had tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for being here, for being so strong." Paulina looked at him with a new clarity in her eyes. "I'm here, Andres," she replied with a firmness he hadn't heard in a long time. "And I'm not going anywhere." As they drove home, with Fernanda asleep in the back seat, Andres felt a deep sense of gratitude. He knew that this night marked a new beginning for all of them. The emergency had rekindled something in Paulina, and she hoped that new flame would continue to grow, illuminating the days to come. As she drove with Paulina at her side and with Fernanda safely in the back seat, Andres felt the darkness finally begin to give way to light. After what happened with Fernanda, the days in Andres and Paulina's house were completely transformed. The transformation was visible and palpable. Paulina resumed her leading role in the home, showing a strength and determination that had not been seen for a long time. Francisca continued to be a crucial member of the family, helping with daily tasks and being a pillar of support for everyone. The relationship between Paulina and Fernanda blossomed, becoming one of the most beautiful things one could witness. The connection between them was deep, full of love and understanding, as if they were destined to meet. Andres felt deeply grateful for everything that had happened since Fernanda came into their lives. He watched with admiration at his wife's resilience and the love that grew between her and Fernanda. At many moments, he reflected on how life had changed for the better and how Fernanda's presence had been the catalyst for that transformation point. One hot summer afternoon, Paulina decided to host a family lunch to celebrate the new phase of their lives and share that joy with her relatives. The house was full of life, laughter, and lively conversation. The relatives, who had not seen Paulina so involved and happy for a long time, were delighted with the change. Fernanda moved comfortably among the guests, feeling more and more at home. The positive energy in the air was contagious, and everyone seemed enveloped in the atmosphere of renewal and hope. After lunch, as everyone gathered in the living room, Paulina stood up and called for everyone's attention. "I'd like to say a few words," she began, her voice firm and full of emotion. All eyes turned to her, and the silence that followed was heavy with expectation. Paulina took a deep breath, looking at each face in the room before continuing. "Over the past few years, I went through extremely difficult times. There was a time when I thought my life was over, that there was no hope for me anymore." She paused, her eyes meeting Andres's, who looked at her with love and pride. "But then Fernanda came into our lives. This little girl gave me back all the hope I had lost. She showed me that there was still love, joy, and reasons to keep going." Fernanda, sitting next to Andres, smiled shyly, her cheeks flushed with pride and happiness. Paulina continued, "Without Andres and his unconditional love, none of this would have been possible. He was my support, my strength in the darkest moments. And of course, I can't forget Francisca. Her care and dedication were fundamental to our family. You are a true blessing in our lives." Francisca's eyes shone with tears of emotion. Paulina smiled at her before turning back to the group. "Today I want to celebrate not only what we have overcome, but also what is to come, and I have very special news to share with all of you." The silence in the room deepened even further, the anticipation palpable. Paulina took one more deep breath before announcing, "I'm pregnant." There was a moment of complete silence, followed by an explosion of applause, laughter, and exclamations of joy. Andres, surprised and excited, ran to hug Paulina, his eyes filled with tears. "It's true, I can't believe it." Fernanda jumped for joy, hugging Paulina and Andres, while Francisca wiped away her tears and smiled widely. Relatives, equally excited, stood up to congratulate the couple and share the joy of the news. Paulina, beaming, looked around at everyone and felt a wave of gratitude and happiness. "This is a new beginning for our family," she said in a firm, hopeful voice. "Life has given us a second chance, and we are going to make the most of it. Thank you all for being here and for being part of this journey." The rest of the afternoon was filled with celebration, laughter, and plans for the future. The house was more alive than ever, reflecting the love and hope that filled everyone's hearts. Andres, Paulina, Fernanda, and the baby to come formed a new family unit, stronger and more united than ever. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the house, Andres felt more hopeful and happy than ever. He looked at Paulina, surrounded by family and friends, and knew that, despite the challenges, they were ready to face anything together. Life had given them a new opportunity, and they were determined to make the most of it. If you like this video of love and hope, subscribe to this channel right now and don't miss any exciting stories. Leave your like and share with us what feeling this story awakened in you. Until next time,